Wilderness Reclamation Mirror, having a giant uncountable threat that draws you cards is exactly what you want. Weird.
Yeah, it ain't bad. Adam Burchett certainly having some success here in the finals. Taking a look at a no-land hand. They're probably not thrilled about that. Oh, geez, twice in a row.
That's a moto bug.
What are the odds?
Pretty low, but eventually something's got to give.
All right, here's a hand with some lands. Scorching Dragonfire, no thank you. And Autumn actually passes on Uro, just keeping 4 lands, Growth Spiral.
Alrighty. I mean, that's one of the better openers here is just the turn 2 Growth Spiral. It's on the play, so you do have that mana advantage. Can cycle that Triumphs, even though Autumn just has 3 lands in hand. Might not be too devastating.
Yeah, the Growth Spiral is where you want to start. You would like to see more later, just a bunch of lands so far, but Autumn has a little bit of time to draw out of it. Now we're switching perspectives here. Autumn's Resolution, not coming through great on the Discord, so we're going to get the perspective of Luis Samuel Deltour, who was also starting in the ideal spot, to Teferi Time Raveler against this deck trying to play on the end step.
Yeah, and this is really the story of Louis' turn, I'm sure, where just that turn 3 Teferi or sometimes turn 4 Teferi with Mystical Dispute backup is just so backbreaking for these decks because it shuts off specifically the synergies with Wilderness Reclamation and Instants. You can still use your lands like Blast Zone and Castle Vantress, but that's nothing compared to where the deck usually runs.
Just a brutal cycle off of Burchett's Triome. It picked up Mystical Dispute without the mana to cast it, so we're playing under Teferi. Burchett does have the Reclamation. Well, for a second, that's getting bounced by Teferi now.
Yeah, but Burchett does have the Blast Zone, so could just churn that up to 3 and then potentially blow up the Wilderness Reclamation blow up the Teferi with the Blast Zone in a weird spot. There's no counter magic from Louis right now.
Yeah, there's enough mana to crank the Blast Zone to 3. That's the play. With a couple counter spells in hand that don't do anything under Teferi, gotta imagine there's going to be some priority on that effect. Here's Reclamation again. That can untap the other mana sources. We'll see if Deltour wants to petty theft that, and he does.
Yeah, it makes sense. Has the stop during the second main, so there's no chance to get the extra mana from the Reclamation. Not that it matters that much anyway, but it does prevent the Blast Zone from ticking up there to blow up the Teferi, so it's going to be problematic for at least one more turn for Autumn.
Here is Uro. Gonna find an Ether Gust. That one is not bad here. Fable Passage and Blast Zone, so plenty of mana on the ban side of things.
Just want to point out what a diverse top 4 we have as far as living regions is concerned. So I thought that was really, really cool. Deltour is from France, so we have France represented in the top 4. Autumn Burchett from Great Britain, I believe, but I don't want to confuse that if they're from Wales or some, I know that there's
the United Kingdom.
Tension among that. The United Kingdom, right? We also have Paulo Vitor Damarosa, world champion from Brazil. And then we have, of course, Scooter Eric Johnson from New Jersey, the most foreign country of them all.
I didn't realize it was New Jersey.
Yeah, he's from Jersey. He's a big
He's
Jersey
quiet
guy.
for a Jersey person.
Oh, wow. You gonna get canceled for that one.
Don't tell P. Sully I said that.
Yeah. All right. Well, Blast Zone's going to take care of that Teferi, and that unlocks potentially this Reclamation turn. Let's see what unfolds.
Teferi is gone. Burchett now has unlocked this Negate and this Mystical Dispute in their hand. Also has a Shark Typhoon at the ready to be cycled.
I believe that will end up being the play. If obviously not casting the Reclamation is pretty suspect. So let's see how this goes.
Yeah, that one is face up.
There's a lot of Teferis. It's all 4 of them, in fact.
Here's an attempt at one. That will meet a negate.
I'm curious if Deltour even goes for the another Teferi here because it does leave the shields down. Luckily for Autumn, though, they're going to be able to dispute this. Their next turn is going to be pretty good. It's just going to be Reclamation and make a big shark. It's about as much as they can do right now.
I think that just based on the texture, Burchett mulliganing to 5, Deltour knows that can't cast all these spells all that quickly. So, he did get both of his spells countered this turn, but he has plenty of leftovers and also just another Teferi hanging out. He's probably not unhappy about that exchange.
Burchett decides to go ahead and cycle that Shark Typhoon for 1, offering the trade next turn perhaps for the Brazen Borrower, looking for something like Expansion Explosion to capitalize on this turn, but unfortunately just finds 2 more lands.
Well, 2 lands to go with that face-up Reclamation. Not a lot going on there.
No, it does have Castle Vantress, potentially. Doesn't cast it, though. Perhaps afraid of that Elspeth Conquers Death and giving Deltour just full value out of it over time.
Yeah, if your Reclamation gets hit by that is a problem. There's no counter magic anymore. On the topic of problems, here is yet another attempt at Teferi Time Raveler.
This one is good. One. Yeah, it's the 4th one. It's the last one, but there may be some bringing them back shenanigans with the ECD later on. But from what I can tell right now, Deltour can choose to bounce the Brazen Borrower while the Blast Zone only has 1 counter on it, and then use the Brazen Borrower's Petty Theft to kill the token to keep the Teferi alive and force that Blast Zone to get very little value.
Yeah, keep that Borrower off the table if the zone is going for 3 anyway. Makes a lot of sense. Nice play. Burchett did leave up mana to scry with Castle Vantress. Also to crank the Blast Zone. Blast Zone goes to 3. Burchett draws a Ketria Triome. Just more on the land front there. Leaving up both the mana to sacrifice the Blast Zone and to cycle the Triome. There's an attack on Teferi, but both players know that this Petty Theft is forthcoming. That'll bounce the Shark. And that works. And once again, Burchett's going to hang on to that Wilderness Reclamation, not just trying to play as hard as possible into Elspeth Conqueror's Death. So go back over to Deltour, is going to plus the Teferi. It's like Fabled Passage and Catch Your Triumph in hand. Can't quite escape Burrow, but probably isn't that far off. There's a lot of Teferis in the graveyard anyway.
Oh, for sure. I just want to point out how incredible it is that Autumn has not cast this Wilderness Reclamation. And I, without having access to like an Expansion Explosion or something, it may not seem like it's that big of a deal, but playing it into an Elspeth Conqueror's Death while getting like no value out of it is like the easiest way in the world to lose. And if they just wait for the perfect time and spot to pop the Teferi, untap, cast Reclamation, Expansion Explosion, and draw like 5 cards, I think that's the way that they can potentially win the game.
Burchett does some scrying, a couple of Growth Spirals to the bottom. Still 1 here, they'll cast that. Put a Fabled Passage on the battlefield, hand now Wilderness Reclamation and Opt. Not a lot going on. They'll try to opt into some business. Scry to the bottom and a Ketria Triome picked up, so more treading water, but it's not like the pace of the Bant ramp deck is particularly fast.
This is really smart technical play by Autumn because they're able to slowly but surely make sure that Teferi has a very small impact, as well as an Elspeth Conqueror's Death has a small impact on the current game state. Like right now, obviously the Growth Spiral drawn and the Fabled Passage drawn are going to allow for the Euro to come back. But for a while, Autumn was containing the graveyard basically by choosing not to play things that Louis could interact with, including the Wilderness Reclamation. Also could easily just unlock themselves from the Teferi with the Blast Zone, but then that would make a future Elspeth Conqueror's Death have more value.
Growth Spiral was card number 5 for Uro. Deltour is going to leave that in the graveyard, though. Burchett does have another Blast Zone. So you see a Cycle of Ketria Triome. Another Opt picked up by Burchett.
Yeah, like I said, oftentimes the threat of the thing is more important than the thing. And right now, the threat of the Blast Zone is more important than actually activating it, because it keeps that Uro from coming back from the graveyard, and it's making it so that Deltour just never gets to use his mana.
I mean, your statement goes both ways, right? You know, Deltour has the threat of the Uro, and this Teferi, it doesn't win the game, but it has to be answered before Burchett realistically can, right?
Oh, for sure. I just think that because the Blast Zone is sitting at 3, it's effectively always going to be able to answer the Teferi. So I think Autumn has initiative. At any point, Autumn can choose to sack the Blast Zone to unlock the game. And when that happens, they're just trying to find the right spot. They're way down on resources. They're up slightly on mana. And they have a bit of card selection with the Castle Vantress. So it's more about just navigating to find the perfect spot to unlock themselves from the Teferi.
Fair enough. You see more scrying with the Castle Vantress. There is mana for Blast Zone. We will see if it's time. With an unknown coming off the top. Unclear, though Reclamation and Expansion Explosion are already in the hand. And you do have to be wary. Deltour still just been hanging on to, looks like 5 cards in hand. One of them is Ether Gust. That one's a problem. Blast Zone does go off. Teferi's down.
All right. So I actually like Reclamation here. I think Deltour will likely use the Ether Gust on it. And then you can just play Opt and then cast Reclamation and then Blast for like 6 or so. I haven't counted it up all the way, but somewhere around there. It's some amount, and it's more than a small amount. So.
A healthy sum. Burchett's going to wait on that part of the plan, though. You see Brazen Borrower flashed in by Deltour.
It's all part of the plan. It's also possible that Burchett is just waiting for some piece of protection to give themselves a bit of breathing room against a potential reactive spell from Deltour, but just tough, man. Autumn had to fight through 4 copies of Teferi already, and we're not done yet. Not even close.
Right. On a mold of 5.
Right.
That like, I think that Gust is a problem. That Mystical Dispute picked up, another problem.
Yeah. Like, I think that Deltour is, like, very far ahead, but at the same time, all it takes is, like, 1 resolved expansion explosion or whatever.
Well, there's an attempt, but Mystical Dispute's going to take that one down. And now Uro entering the battlefield for Deltour.
Well, that negate came about half a turn too late. If we can find another expansion explosion, though, can maybe... Ooh, I guess the Mystical Dispute wasn't quite good enough. There's too much mana on the other side of the table. Growth Spiral's a redraw. Miss. Brutal.
Opt into Growth Spiral into Stomping Ground.
Yeah, I mean, that's where the cookie crumbles sometimes. When you play almost half or more of your deck of mana sources, there's not really a whole lot you can do about it. And now Deltour really has Burchett kind of under the clock, under the thumb, and kind of forcing their actions.
And Burchett's at 12. It was just 9 power already on the table. Here you see Reclamation. Burchett gets to do some scrying with Castle Vantress, but they have a lot of ground to make up quickly.
Now, if nothing is drawn here that's of like significant consequence, I'm not sure. I mean, the problem is that there like 2 Elspeth Conquers Death can be cast, I think, unless yeah.
2 Elspeth Conquers Death and 2 Ether Gust.
Yeah, this is bad news. I think because Burchett waited so long, it just allowed Deltour to accrue a bunch of interaction. And I don't think there was any real way for Autumn to play around it. They just didn't have the right game plan. Or sorry, there was not enough resources available to have a winning game plan.
Yeah, they did a good job of seeing as many cards as they could, but largely the question here was which turn do you want to lose on?
Right.
Here comes Elspeth Conquers Death. See a Scorching Dragonfire and an Uro. Burchett will keep the Uro.
Mm-hmm.
Gain some life, get a blocker in theory, if not for Ether Gust.
I think that might be one of the more frustrating aspects of playing against Temur Reclamation is that even when you're winning, it usually takes a little while to actually win the game. And it doesn't really feel like you're winning because sometimes you could just die at like any spot. It's a lot like playing against a traditional combo deck in a lot of ways.
Don't think that's going to be a problem this time, though, as Luis Samuel Deltour does cross the finish line, up a game over Autumn Burchett.
Yeah, I mean that was a really well navigated game, I think, by Autumn, and unfortunately just didn't have the tools or resources to actually make those decisions matter. But well played, a lot of patience there.
But really, both sides, I think, are demonstrating a deep understanding of the matchup. Deltour knew that Teferi single-handedly was asking for the Blast Zone, could have shoved harder at multiple points, but was able to just leave up mana and leverage interaction spells in the hand. So if at any point Burchett did try to break things up earlier, could have used the Ether Gust that he'd been holding for so long.
Oh, absolutely. It was well played by both sides. I mean, we have two world-class players here in the finals here on our first SCG Tour online qualifier. This is an amazing event with a lot of great players. I mean, if you just look at the top 8, we got Paulo Vitor Damarosa, Autumn Burchett. We watched them play last round. Autumn came out on top in a marathon match. Luis Samuel Deltour against my buddy Scooter, defeated Temur Reclamation. There's a lot of Temur Reclamation, but the gameplay has been fantastic, and I am looking forward to seeing a lot more. Maybe not with Wilderness Reclamation in the format at some point, crosses your fingers. But still great gameplay nonetheless.
Game 2 of Paulo versus Autumn in the semifinals here. That is definitely one to go back and watch.
Mm-hmm.
Players underway in the finals here. Burchett opening up on that growth spiral. Deltour also has one.
Yeah, Deltour is going to be looking to draw a bunch of lands in a row. Looks like he has a lot of really juicy tools at his disposal as far as spells to ramp into, and has the growth spiral. And this is one reason why I'm not. I mean, I understand why Dovin's Veto's in these decks, but like when you draw Forest, Dovin's Veto sometimes just looks so bad. Like here it's not going to punish him too much, hopefully. But just imagine if this were a mirror match or something, and like just didn't have access to Veto on 2 against a Teferi or something. It would be a complete blowout.
Sure. This is more of a matchup where you're casting your counterspell on turn 10, though, right?
Oh, for sure. I mean, in this matchup specifically, Veto is obviously ideal.
Right. And Temur Rec is only like 60% of the metagame.
75 if we're looking at the top 4 statistics. 3 out of every 4 decks are Temur Reclamation. And that is how you skew statistics.
Here's an attempt at Teferi. Burchett's just cashing in a growth spiral. Once again, draws the counter after the Teferi is on the table.
It's an interesting spot from Deltour. I'm curious if he ticks up just to keep the Teferi nice and healthy or bounces. Looks like he's going to go for the bounce. Ooh, maybe he takes it back.
Went ahead and bounced that Spectral Sailor that Burchett flashed in. Ooh, nice one off the top for Burchett and commenced the endgame, but no 6 to the land just yet. Spectral Sailor immediately draws a card. It's Expansion Explosion, so a pass from there. I liked the aggressive stance. I like that play a lot.
No, me too. I think that you just use all of the mana you can and hope that it's enough. And unfortunately, I think the static effect of this Teferi might end up being a little too much for Autumn to deal with, and I think we're going to have a kind of repeat of our other semifinal backup match between Deltour and Scooter, where Bant takes down Reclamation.
Another non-land off the top. That's bad. It's a counterspell. That's worse. Burchett growth spirals into a blast zone. So that's something going all right, though Deltour is now getting that Teferi back into bounce range, just going right back up to 3 now. Ketria Triome's land number 5. Nissa can't join the party just yet, but sitting on Dovin's veto is generally okay. You know, not so much against Commence the endgame anyway. But the Teferi has covered.
Yeah, the problem is the Commence the endgame in this spot has to be cast at sorcery speed, thanks to the static effect of Teferi. And then that allows the Teferi to just clean up the token nicely. So really what you paid for was 6 mana for a draw 2. And that doesn't look nearly as good as the 6/6 last game that ate a euro in combat, or 7/7 last game that ate a euro in combat, you know?
Right. The Teferi also just a 3 mana draw 2 at this point. And it's not even going to bounce. We just see Teferi upping and Nissa untapping this Ketria Triome. That unlocks casting Brazen Borrower. Yeah, so you get to maintain some loyalty this way. That is brutal. Burchett to 13.
Yeah, that's a huge pickup. That Borrower was a really nice draw from Deltour, and that might seal it. This Nissa is a lot of pressure. And if you just look at Autumn's hand, it's a bunch of stuff that's great at instant speed with Wilderness Reclamation, and a bunch of defensive measures that are completely worthless under the thumb of Teferi, and I believe that this game is over. Let's see if the Shark Typhoon's enough to get out of it, but, you know, with the Teferi looming, I don't know that it can be.
Shark Typhoon is a card with text, which is better than some cards in Autumn's deck. Now, does it have enough text? Unclear. It was printed in 2020. The cards do have a lot of text.
Yeah. Now, Autumn can only expansion explosion for 30. They could use that on the Ketria Triome to draw 3 cards and protect their life total a bit for at least a small amount of time. I wouldn't even be surprised if Deltour went full aggro next turn and just cast another Nissa after making a 3/3 land, just to pressure Autumn's life total.
Explosion is going to knock that land down, so you go back to Deltour. Still plenty of mana left. Nissa doubling 4 of these lands. Gonna wake up this forest, attack Burchett down to 10.
A conservative play, but I think it's the correct play. Just the Nissa tick up, force Autumn to deal with what's on the table before you get a little overzealous with backup Nissa.
All right, what can Burchett do to get out of this? You see an Uro in the hand now. It's got a lot of ground to make up, though.
I've been in Autumn situation so many times. Just reclamation, staring at a Teferi, you're trying to figure it out, and it's just not really coming together. You keep drawing Mystical Disputes, you keep drawing Negate, Euro, things that aren't really making a huge meaningful impact. But the Blast Zone could give them some hope. Wow.
Wilderness Reclamation attempted. That'll eat the Dovin's veto.
I think that's a really smart veto from Deltour. There's not a whole lot of cards you really care about countering anymore. But the being able to untap the Blast Zone could threaten to blow up the Teferi. And then once the Teferi is gone, you just have access to a ton of mana. So
Burchett opt. Card at the bottom draws Blast Zone. So there's 2 of those on the table now, though. So we go back to Deltour. This Nissa is going to make another land a creature. Brazen Borrower hanging out on an adventure.
One potential play here is just tap all your blue mana, main phase the Borrower, and then untap a blue mana to bluff a counterspell. It may not be worth doing that.
Might be considering pre-combating the second Nissa just to get as many attackers as quickly as possible.
Maybe. It seems really aggressive to do it, but it might be worthwhile, and I think that's what's about to happen.
Yeah, I mean, you're playing against a deck with no sweepers, right? Currently no blockers.
Yeah, it's just really awkward for a Planeswalker that's sitting at 8 loyalty and has an 8 loyalty ultimate, but I understand. I think
I mean, generally I would agree, but Nissa oftentimes plussing is better than ultimating.
that's true. But the ultimate lets you get so much food for the other ones.
If the game goes on 12 more turns, you're gonna want those lands.
I hear no lies coming from your mouth, Mr. Overturf.
Uro will escape for Burchett. But we call that a target for Elspeth Conquer's death where I'm from.
That's a pretty good target for Elspeth Conquer's death, too, if I'm not mistaken. All right, it looks like we're going to end up just shy of enough lethal attackers next turn, unless, I guess there's a, no, once Autumn passes the turn, it's unclear how many counters on each of the, are on those blast zones. There's so many lands in play that they've shrunken beyond my ability to read the number on them. Just unfortunate because I think they matter.
I'm going to guess that the numbers are not 3 or 5.
Well, that's good news for Deltour because that means that right now he has access to a lethal attack if he can Elspeth Conquer's Death and play another Nissa. May not have the mana to do both of those things, though. I guess he could just minus with a Teferi. Doesn't he have to ECD?
Yeah, you can just do that bounce. With both Nissas plussing and the forest doubled, I think there's plenty of mana here.
No, there's plenty. One of the blast zones on 2, actually. So it can blow up the glass casket.
Sure.
And create a blocker.
Elspeth Conquer's Death. That's going to take care of Uro. All right. Here's your Nissa ultimate. That means there's plenty of mana.
Plenty of mana.
These lands do enter tap, though. Deltour considering bouncing his own borrower again. Heads up, considering a blocking Shark Typhoon. Doesn't do that just yet, but only attacks with the lands.
Wouldn't mind actually just a big cycle block, but Autumn is trying to consider how to churn up these blast zones and if they can get them to a spot where they can blow them and come back. The problem is, if they don't cycle the Shark Typhoon, they have nothing proactive. Their hand is entirely counterspells that are bricked by Teferi. It's such a horrible hand, but those lands are also indestructible. So just like taking 6 damage here means that like you're not going to be able to claw back into the game in a very meaningful way. You just got to prevent as much damage as you can, I think.
One land connects, Burchett to 7, Teferi bounces the Shark token. Mystical Dispute picked up. And, honestly, Burchett needs to resolve multiple spells to get anywhere. That one might be fine.
All right, Glass Casket unlocked. Spectre Sailor can draw a card. It's the last gasp of a dying Team of Wreck player. It's an expansion explosion, but there's only 4 mana untapped. I don't think it's enough.
4 counterspells in hand against a Teferi. Expansion explosion after drawing off Spectral Sailor. Looks like there's just not going to be enough mana, and a lot of these cards just don't do anything.
Right. It's unfortunate. Autumn's run is going to be cut short here, but a deserving champion in Luis Samuel Deltour, and that takes it